The harsh reality of economics in EU5 is that if your market is a little bit overcooked and you're meeting existing demand, then there's not really any point building loads of buildings or upgrading your production further. So you're faced with the choice of expanding your trading capacity and making you be reliant on external markets, or taking a long-term approach and increasing demand in your market. And there's definitely room for both approaches, even at the same time. But considering how unreliable trade is, we're going to focus on that internal demand. And there's two ways to affect this: through your population or your buildings. So starting with our population, I'm sure you've all realised by now that each of our estates, or different demographics in our society, have different pop needs and goods that they buy with their own money. For example, fur is the biggest expenditure of our nobles, or salt being the biggest expenditure of our burghers. By navigating to the Society tab and hovering over a population type, you can see the goods that these populations require and the demand they add to your economy on a demographic level. Now, the key demands that you can build an economy out of are books, which your nobles, clergy and burghers all demand, fine cloth, and paper. And all three of these goods require a certain level of development for the pops to demand it. So if you have an area of lower development but quite a lot of infrastructure, then why not encourage development in this area to get these resource demands? Because a higher demand, let's just take fine cloth in your market, means more profitable tailors' guilds and higher demand for cloth, dyes, and any precursor goods that are used to make these. So you're pushing demand through your entire economy. So how can we increase the amount of these high-profile pops that we have in our economy? Well, urbanizing, firstly to a town, will increase your possible nobles, clerics and burghers, giving you a very good foundation to build some demand. Cities will also boost this up, but they are expensive, so whether it's cost effective in comparison to our other measures, we'll find out in a bit. To increase your nobles directly, you can now construct toll castles, which increase your possible nobles by 10. You can do this in rivers and in mountains, but they can only be built in a place where there is a road and they meet the required terrain. You can also increase the amount of burghers you have through peasant buildings. One of the reasons why I love market villages so much, because they can just increase your base burghers by 10, even in places that aren't urbanized. They also increase the amount of labourers and soldiers you have, which have their own population demands too, but they're not as high value as the top three. You can also be a bit cheeky by building buildings over that inherent possible cleric cap or other types of population, because then your location will use its inherent promotion speed to make people to fill these jobs, taking you over your baseline cap. Which is yet another reason for why free subjects is just infinitely better than serfdom in 1.1. Additionally, on the topic of values, spiritualist increases your possible clerics in towns and cities, and aristocracy increases your possible nobles in towns and cities. Both will increase your domestic demand, so at the moment you really should go for both of them, even over some of the insane buffs that humanist and plutocracy give you. And there's also some estate privileges that help you out with this one too. Just a quick interlude. If you've enjoyed this video or learned something, please consider liking or subscribing. It genuinely means the world and makes a gigantic difference. Now back to the video. So I think we now realise how strong inherent population demand is. But have we realised how strong buildings can be for this combined effect? And sure, buildings do have upkeep. I'm not hiding away from this, but your economy benefits much more from this, and you get the benefits of the building on top. So let's have a look through and explain the important buildings that you need to be looking out for and min-maxing in your economy to get the best economic benefit. And I think the most obvious one to combine the two categories of buildings and trade is marketplaces. They directly affect your economy by increasing your trade advantage, your trade capacity, your market access, your burghers' trade capacity, which will significantly boost your economic inflows and outflows. And this leads directly into economic advantage for you and your pops, because trade income is divided by your estate power. So with 22% crown power, we get 22% of that trade income, and the rest goes to our other estates. But more importantly, these marketplaces have a base production process using cloth, jewellery, paper, beeswax, and salt, increasing that demand for our entire economy even some high value goods like salt and jewellery, meaning that when we can produce this in our own domestic industry, we've got more people to sell it to and we're not relying on selling to external markets, meaning we make more money off our own population. And let's be honest, there's a lot of buildings in the game. So which buildings should we focus on to have the biggest economic impact? Other than marketplaces, libraries is the most important one on game start. Why? Because it gives you some absolutely insane buffs for your location, monthly literacy, max literacy, institution growth, pop promotion speed, and cultural influence, which affects how quickly you can integrate provinces. But also creates a production method that requires paper and books, which you can then build an entire economy off of, as lumber makes paper, paper makes books, and then that's sold to your people in your economy. And when you get rag paper, you can turn wool into cloth, cloth directly into paper, and follow the same spiral, allowing you to build a huge economic loop. And when you unlock universities, it's a similar sort of loop, but it goes to the next level, as it requires a hell of a lot more paper, glass, and beeswax, putting increased demand onto your economy for goods that aren't necessarily that useful, allowing you to fight it on all fronts and make a lot of dosh. As you can see, universities are the vast majority of our glass demand. Now this does get used later on, but early on, it's integral. But the big one, and the most important one you have to go for, is armouries and training fields when you get them, because they completely kickstart your economy, even if themselves are quite an expensive building to maintain, being the backbone of your military. They give you 10 monthly manpower and the ability to recruit regiments, but also for each one, add an upkeep of 0.5 firearms, 0.5 leather, 0.1 cloth, 0.2 paper, and 0.5 weaponry. And a lot of these resources don't have high demand in the early game, especially weaponry and tanneries, especially weaponry and leather, so you can kickstart your entire economy and a load of these buildings by increasing demand for them. Oftentimes, I find my tanneries just aren't profitable until I get armouries, and yet you start with quite a lot in your economy, so you're adding in productive capacity that would just otherwise be wasted. Now, these are the big main examples across your country, but all of your buildings, each one of them, have inherent demands from their production process. So whenever you're making a building, just have it in the back of your mind, is this helping our economy, or are we just contributing to the overcooking of our market? Even unique buildings can have a big impact, like a rural garden. See how much it adds to our base demand. Or an urban parliament seat, increasing our demand for books and fine cloth. Everything contributes, so keep this in mind when you're building your economy. And if you want to learn more about the book spiral that's incredibly strong in the Renaissance era, click the video on screen now. Trust me, it's a great watch.